Take a look behind the curtain with a real whistleblower and American patriot. Prepare to embrace the uncomfortable truth because this program has no time for comforting lies. Here is civil liberties enthusiast, Second Amendment defender, and recovering FBI agent Kyle Seraphin.
Hello, my friends. Welcome to the Kyle Seraphin Show. Today's Thursday. It is August the 28th, and kind of a somber one at that. Kind of an interesting moment we find ourselves in. I told you this was going to be a big week. I didn't really understand that it was in this way. And today we're going to be covering the anatomy of a cover-up. That's the thing I want to dig into. And perhaps I'll look. We always tell you we'll look behind the curtain. I got some really interesting insights, I think. From what happened yesterday, there was a shooting at a church in Minneapolis, Minnesota. I think culturally there's some big problems that exist with it. But then there's this news media coverage. And I can't tell whether it's them trying to be more responsible or they're just blatant liars and they know better. And I lean towards the latter, obviously, as many of you will as well. So we're going to talk about the situation with the Minneapolis school shooting and the church. We're going to talk more broadly about the attack on Christianity in this country, which is ongoing. And it happens at a cultural level, but it's now happening actually in a kinetic way and kind of has been for a little while. This is nothing new. If you guys have followed me since I was working with Catholic Vote, you'll know that they had a tracker at the bottom of CatholicVote.org. You can still go right now. In fact, I encourage you to go check out my friends at Catholic Vote. Go look at their tracker. It's on the main page every time you go to CatholicVote.org, and you'll see it. Over 500 instances of property damage and violence done at Catholic churches, from spray paint to broken windows to firebombing to murder. It runs the entire gamut, and many of them not prosecuted, at least under the previous DOJ. Thankfully, we're seeing a little bit of a change. I'll give credit where it's due. Whether it was pressure or otherwise, we saw the FBI come out and say they're going to investigate this as a hate crime. I don't know what the love crime looks like, so I'm not a big fan of hate crime statutes, but as the proper application, it does seem to be very targeted. Even if the media can't figure that part out, because it's so mysterious, whatever happened, the motive is just not clear. I'm going to explain to you how obviously false that was, and false to the people who said it. So that's going to be problematic. We're going to be talking about some heavy subjects today, so I appreciate your patience. Yesterday was actually a little bit more emotional talking about it. I went on InfoWars with Alex Jones. I didn't plan on being on there. They just asked me if I would jump on, because I had some really early tips. And I think, as far as I can tell, we were the first, we being me and the guys over at InfoWars, were the first ones to explain that this was a transgender identifying shooter in Minneapolis. And I don't like breaking news. I'll tell you more about that in a second here, but I really don't. It's decidedly uncomfortable because it's not what I set out to do. My world is analysis. My world is commentary. And I don't like to get out there and be the first one. There's some stuff that goes on with breaking news and a responsibility that comes with it that I just don't want to hold on to. But in this case, I think it was necessary. And I think what we did was actually pretty good in the long run. So we'll get into all of that in just a moment. I hope you guys stick around and make sure that you like the video. Make sure that you're liking the channel. If you're listening on Spotify, if you're listening on audio, thanks so much for joining us. We do really appreciate all you guys. And here's a brief read for one of our sponsors that keeps us on the air. That's how we get to do what we do. The Department of Energy has released shocking reports stating that energy skyrocketing demand and costs, they're going to keep increasing, from electric cars to electric and AI data centers, and power outages could increase up to 10,000%. That's such a huge number. It's a huge increase in the possibility. If you don't have a backup generator of some kind, if you guys are on propane, great. If you have a gasoline or a diesel, that'll get you a little while. One thing you can also do is an easy renewable option, and that's the solar generator. I have a Grid Doctor 3300. It is sitting directly outside the studio, and if we lost power here, you guys wouldn't even notice. It works as an uninterrupted power supply for your most critical items. Unlike a gas generator, you can use it inside. It also comes with the package you can set up with like a 75-foot cable to run through your doors, flat underneath your door jamb. Go out there and put up these huge solar panels in your backyard, and you can have this like real quiet, silent option to still be on grid, and or at least be powered up while all your neighbors are running around in the dark. It's a really nice option. And if you pair it with another battery backup, you can even run things like your modem and still be connected to the world. Go to mypatriotsupply.com/Kyle. Again, it's mypatriotsupply.com/Kyle. Right now, they've got a sweet deal going on, and I'm kind of going to have to talk to them about this too. They have a free expansion battery, which means you can double the life of the and capacity of your solar generator. My studio here has about 6 massive lights that light up. I've got multiple monitors, probably like in the neighborhood of 4 or 5 monitors, a very powerful computer, and all of the sound equipment you see around me. And of course, the backdrop is also lit. It all runs off the same generator. And I think when the power went out, it gave us an estimation that it would last for like 60 hours, 58 hours or something like that. Doubling that is really powerful. So you can keep your refrigeration, you can keep all kinds of important things, whether you have like sensitive medical stuff, or maybe you have some, desperate needs to make sure that you have power for something. You don't have to rely on just hope. You got battery backup. So check them out, mypatriotsupply.com/KYLE. They've extended this into the first week of September. So you got a little bit of time to act on this, but think about it and then count your pennies and make an investment in your own backup power. It does really change the game when the power goes out, if you guys have never done that before. All right, here we go. Let's jump into today's show. And like I said, it might be a little heavy. Okay, so we saw sort of the anatomy of a cover-up, and that's what I want to talk about today. As much as we do coverage of what the news has to say, I think a lot of what this program is about is meta coverage and helping you sort of decipher or confirm. A lot of you already know what is going on here, but we're going to confirm the sort of media bias and the way that things work out, and kind of say like, hey, you're not a crazy person if you're seeing this stuff. Like, you're not wrong for noticing the way these things go down. Our mainstream media seems to push something, and it doesn't matter who you listen to. So if you're listening to CNN or if you're listening to Fox, and I suspect people here are pretty hip to the idea that Fox News is also, someone said it the other day. They said it is a conservative media product sold to boomers by a liberal company. I want you to think about all of that. What do you think of that? It's a conservative media product, but not conservative. I'm going to show you there's very, very little difference or daylight between the coverage that Fox News did, CNN did, and so on and others. It's not actually holding your values, and they are still biased. That's the problem. If they were giving you real information, saying, here's the information, like, do what you want with it, then it doesn't make a difference. There's the only issue of editorial bias, which is which stories do you cover, which ones do you not cover. All of this stuff stems from the shooting that happened yesterday, and I want to read from ABC News. I went looking for something in this and I didn't see it. And I'm actually sort of appreciative. This is the principal for that school. Look, I went to Catholic schools in my kindergarten years, first grade through third grade. I went to different Catholic schools. I went to public school for a little while in third grade. And then in fourth grade, I had 3 different third grades I went to because we moved. And I went to an Episcopal school for a little while, and that was okay. Going to private schooling and going to faith-based schooling was very impactful on my life, and maybe not as a young adult, actually. So for those of you that have kids in their 20s, and you're looking and you're like, hey, I spent all this money and I sent them to this place and I tried to indoctrinate them into my faith values, and then they didn't take. They might come back to you. You never, especially if they have children. That was my experience. Like a lot of Catholics, I think, have that experience. I went to Catholic high schools, kind of a more liberal high school setup, but still, we went to mass every Friday. We went on holy days, and it's a tool in the fight against some of this stuff. And what you don't want to see is indoctrination. And I don't trust Catholic schools right now, even today. And this is why I went looking for what I did in this story. And luckily, I don't see it. So maybe he didn't say something to this effect. But what you often find are very kind of softened values that are not truly Catholic. They're not truly Christian values. They're acceptable to whatever is in vogue in society. And I don't like that. I don't like seeing squishiness in Christianity. So not everybody who listens to this show is a Christian, but I will tell you that if you're going to be part of a team, if you're going to be part of a crew, if you want to put a label on yourself, then that means you have to act like the label, and you have to know that occasionally you fail, but your aspiration is to actually do all those things. So you can't endorse transgenderism, and you can't endorse like love is love and all people should be happy and therefore homosexual marriage is okay if you're Christian. And I've gotten into these discussions with people. It's like, look, politically, it doesn't make a difference to me. If you're gay and you want to live with your life partner, that's your business. That's the politics of it. I don't want the government involved. But from a faith perspective, I want you to have a fulfilling life. And I don't believe, based on the religion that I hold, that that's the way that you do it. So I don't apologize for it, but I don't hate you because of it. Again, there is an attitude of we can be upset about sin and also look and say that we have plenty of sins in our own hearts and that we have a plank in our own eye. And before we go in after our neighbors and try to fix their problems, maybe we should get ourselves right first. Whoever has, we don't throw the first stone unless you have no sin. And if you have no sin, then apparently you're the only walking saint. And, good for you. And you're probably a woman because you probably think you have no sins, right? Okay. Is that a dad joke? This principal spoke out. So here he is. And he gave a speech and he said some things that I think are poignant and I think they're appropriate. And he referred to the shooting as a nightmare, called his team a dream team, and said they'll recover from this. Children are resilient. I've seen a couple of interviews. I'm not going to play them. I'm not going to play the kids' interviews for a couple of reasons. Number one, going up to a child who's 7 or 8 years old and getting them to discuss their friends getting shot right next to them, I think that is ghoulish behavior. And our news media did that. And so I'm not going to play a little kid, although I was incredibly impressed with a couple of these kids who seem resilient, talked about laying on top of their friends and trying to, block them with their bodies, a 10-year-old laying on top of an 8-year-old, heroic behavior. And God bless their parents for raising them with that. And God bless them for having the wherewithal to be part of that. I'm not playing kids. And the other reason is I do not want to show their faces because they don't have a decision. It's the reason why you'll never see pictures of my kids. I think that if you are a Christian person, I think if you're a decent person, if you're conservative in this country, then you know that children are to be protected. And we have to do that. Like I see people post pictures of their babies online all the time. It's like, I get how proud you are of this, but that is not where you do it because the internet is full of psychos and crazy people. And we're going to be talking about one of them today. So if we're not going to protect children, if you're going to use them for that one moment when they don't get to opt in, the parents that were like starting the Facebook saying, oh, these are my kids. And like, oh, I'm going to start their Facebook page now. And I'm going to start posting pictures of them as a baby. Disgusting. It really is disgusting. I have such a huge problem with that. You're the only person as a parent who can defend your children. You're going to put their face out there. It's going to be available for deep fakes and evil and all kinds of other people are going to find them. All right, so here's the specifics of the story. Minneapolis PD says that a shooter opened fire outside of a Minneapolis school just before 8:30 a.m. 2 children, an 8-year-old and a 10-year-old who were sitting in the church school pews, were killed in the attack. 17 others, including 14 children, were injured. A number of them have been out of the hospital since then. But the shooter ended up killing himself and shutting this thing down. This president, the school principal, his name is Matt DeBoer. He says that to any of our students and our families and staff that are watching, I love you. You're so brave. And I'm sorry this ever happened to us. That's the right word. Those are the right words. And then he said, within seconds of the situation beginning, our teachers were heroes. The children were ducked down. The adults were protecting the children. Older children were protecting younger children. And we heard that it could have been significantly worse without heroic actions on them. It's a sick and sad world that we have to think about these things. But we do. We live in a fallen world. And actually, if you go and look at the numbers, we have a safer society by the numbers than we've had maybe ever in human history. But these poignant examples, and Minneapolis is not close to me, and it's not local news, it's not really my news, but it feels like it's all of our news because all of this stuff is piped into your eyeballs every single day. So the first thing to recognize is that the odds of this happening are quite low, and that the odds that someone who is on some sort of transgender medication or something like that goes and does this is low, and there's not that many of them. But it doesn't mean it should happen, and it doesn't mean that our society's values are promoting something good. So in a very sober way, we can say that this is a lightning strike rare capability, and even having 8 of them in the last couple years, when you consider there's 300 plus million people in this country, 350 if you factor in all the illegals and so on, right? There are hundreds of millions of people in the United States, and we've had 8 instances with several thousand days. It's not that common. And so it feels very real, and these people will never be the same, but it doesn't necessarily personally affect a lot of you. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't learn lessons. We should look out there and see them. And more importantly, what we should see is that there's this vested interest in our media to lie to us about what happens in order to get certain other things that are going to definitely affect you. And one of those is coming after civil liberties. And they always guise themselves in the cloak of tolerance and concern and compassion. There's nothing compassionate about giving people psychoactive medications and confirming lies and putting a lie into somebody's head and then saying that's okay and then acting like you're somehow also simultaneously in this completely different belief system. The mother of this individual, whose name was Robert Westman, he changed his name legally with his mother's help while he was a minor at 17 years old. So your mother is involved in affirming a lie. And anybody who listens and reads, Christian scripture understands that that's what we always talk about. The devil. There was a story I think in New York Post. The devil made me do it kind of thing. But I just watched the show on Amazon. It's a goofy thing with the guy who plays the Nazi from Inglourious Bastards, Christopher Waltz, and I think that's his name. And he's playing this like devil character. And he's really good. It's a really bad story, but the devil made me do it sort of attitude means that the open door is when you're open to lies. If you're willing to affirm and be part of and celebrate lies, then you're inviting things that could be demonic into your life, especially lies that are going to involve changing the chemicals in your brain. This man, DeBoer, called for action following the mass shooting, imploring the community members not to just support the school shooting victims, but also to do more. And here's what he said, because I was waiting for it. I was waiting for this gun control piece. He said, we as a community have a responsibility to make sure that no parent, no child, no teacher ever has to experience what we went through today. Ever again, we need to commit those words to your speech pattern. Never again. I agree, but we live in a fallen world, and you're not going to be able to stop human nature. Unlike what the FBI director and the deputy director were claiming early on in their tenure, after like a month in, that they cured murder, or that the murder rates were so far down, they were going to eliminate the concept of murder. The concept of murder goes back to the dawn of man, violence of, man against his brother. Very, very real. And when you start inviting things like this into your world, then you're asking for some real trouble. If you guys can't see this, for those of you that are just listening, it is worth looking at this. This is a picture of the young man that was involved in it. And I'm going to give you guys a timeline that apparently the mainstream media is not going to have. And apparently I have significantly better sources than ABC, CBS, NBC, the New York Times, take your pick, everybody, Fox News. I had better sources than all of these people because it said 8:30 and about 9 o'clock my time, or 9 o'clock their time, rather, I was already getting photographs of this guy, his name, and that he, the casualty count, which I think is actually turned out to be accurate, and additionally that he was a male identifying as a female with both names. The story goes is that he was born Robert, and his mother, who worked at that church, who worked at the Catholic, church, and was part of the community and just recently retired, helped transition him over socially with a new name. And what you're seeing on the screen right here, which you haven't maybe seen before, if you have, now you know. Again, this is a drawing from his manifesto book, or whatever the hell this sort of chaotic writings were. There's a mixture of, looks like Russian or Ukrainian written in there with something in Cyrillic. There is a drawing of a vanity with somebody with long hair from the back and a rifle slung and a handgun on a waistband, looking into a vanity mirror and seeing a demon, a four-horned, demonic, like cow-like figure with a human body, as though he was looking into himself and saw a demon. Now, we don't have the context for it, and you can also tell there's hearts around it, which is crazy. We also see a little flower pot. This person was not well. I think that's pretty clear. And then when you see the weapon systems that were involved and all of the different things that were sort of like engaged in this shooting, he has, it looks like maybe a Walther. I was trying to figure out what gun it was, but I got distracted because it has writing all over it, which was exactly like what happened in New Zealand in the Christchurch shooting. The guy had all these like writings, and some of it was like gamer memes, and some of it was political ideology. On his optic, on his rifle, it said "Kill Trump." Okay. So some of these things are really clear. He said, "Where's your God? I hate you. I love you." They're written all over the magazines, all this kind of script. None of this stuff looks healthy. One of them said sponsored by BlackRock. I have his own words. I'll show you some of that. Actually, maybe we'll lead with that so you guys get the context of what we're talking about. And then, what we'll do is we'll go into the news media coverage of it, because that was where I think the real lie happened. And I think yesterday is where the actual victory happened. And I don't want to blackpill anybody. I think that this was actually kind of a win on the media narrative side. It is an atrocious and horrible thing. And so yesterday when I was doing news coverage, I was like vacillating between nausea, knowing that somebody's 8-year-old and 10-year-old were not coming home. I have an 8-year-old sitting right downstairs right now. And I, went down and gave her a hug and then come back up, and then I'm doing the program. It's really, really hard to square those things. Here is both mental illness and I think an invitation to let true evil walk in to your life. We're going to watch some of this stuff because I think it's worth seeing. And by the way, I think the only reason this stuff was kept and grabbed was because we had enough notice for people to get it. If you did not, then it would have been scrubbed. And that is a big piece of the media story as well. So let's do that real quick. We're cutting away to this madman, Robert, AKA Robin Westman's video uploaded and then scrubbed from YouTube.
This message brought to you by BlackRock and ExxonMobil. Sponsored by Pabst Blue Ribbon, Brandon Herrera for president. Yeah, I met Brandon Herrera at SHOT Show last year. He and I had a brief conversation, but I think we agreed on a lot of things. So, y'all should vote for Brandon Herrera for president. And Vintage Warfare promotes love and peace and accepting differences.
What? Those are dummy rounds. He's been splashing ammo around on his bed.
Tomorrow, I'm sorry to my family. But that's it. That's the only people I'm sorry to. Fuck those kids. Skibbity. Skibbity.
Okay.
Shit.
It goes on. I'm going to pull the audio down on this just because he's staring down at a blank floor right now. This is not someone who's well. I also don't think that he has any connection to Brandon Herrera. That seems pretty clear. And when Brandon Herrera put out a statement saying he was horrified and didn't remember meeting him. I don't know Brandon, but I do know people who know him. And the point that was being made online that I think is totally reasonable is that there's not a lot of transgender people at SHOT Show, ever. I've been to SHOT twice. I've spent probably 8 days in total inside the convention hall. That is not something that you see in that crowd. You see a lot of LARPers. You saw a lot of fat dudes that are like wearing kit, but you don't see a lot of men dressed up like women walking around in that area. And now you're seeing on the screen all the weapons. You can see a shotgun, which was a pump. I think it was a 590 Mossberg. You've got an AR platform, and it's all written up with all the same sort of crazy writings and style, drawings and symbols and so on. And some of them are in English and some of them are written in some sort of like Russian type stuff. And they're all over the map. Like they're not coherent. But if you had somebody who was a transgender type person rolling in to have a conversation with a pretty famous gun tuber, this is somebody on YouTube who does a lot of gun videos, you'd remember that because it's pretty remarkable. You meet a few people out there that stand out. And I think a dude with red hair dressed up like a chick with earrings and stuff like that would actually probably stand out. And that was the comment made by other gun tubers. What's wild is that this made it up onto YouTube and wasn't scrubbed. And then apparently right after the shooting and after people started downloading it, and luckily some folks that I had in the DMs on the background said, hey, is this the right guy? Because they were sending me pictures. I withheld the picture and I withheld the name right away, only because I didn't want to be responsible for putting that out and I didn't want to out my source. And I said, yeah, that's the right one. They found videos and pictures and they found this stuff. So all this stuff got archived. And I think in a lot of ways, this stuff would have been hidden because the mainstream media, if you only followed mainstream news, you would have absolutely no idea about any of this stuff. And likely they would have gotten rid of it. I'm going to get a little deeper into the idea of that because as I talked about it on InfoWars yesterday with the folks like Owen Schroyer, there is a program that the FBI has had for years. I've got an Intercept article sitting up in front of me right now showing that Bronze Griffin, Operation Bronze Griffin, that interface that we heard about during the Twitter files, which was to say that the FBI, as a front person for the entire intelligence community behind it, 17 different agencies, kind of used the FBI with its official law enforcement front to go and interface with big tech. And they interfaced with YouTube, and I know they interfaced with Reddit, and they interfaced with Google, aka Alphabet. They worked with Meta, which is your Facebooks and those kind of things. And so all of these big tech companies had liaisons that were either official or they had recruited sources within the big tech companies. So that's all of your video platforms, it's all of your discussion boards and so on. Twitter had the same thing. Elon Musk opened up the books to people like Schellenberger and Matt Taibbi and some others, Barry Weiss, and gave us the Twitter files in 2022. This was right after I became a outspoken public speaker and went on with Dan Bongino. So you've got guys like Elvis Chan out of the San Francisco field office of the FBI, who, by the way, was allowed to retire under Cash Patel. He was able to just walk out and take his pension. And this interaction between the intel community and the law enforcement community, let's call them kind of mixed together in federal, and that sort of ability to apply pressure. We already know that they censored tens of thousands of American accounts. I've done hits with Dan Bongino back in the days when I was sitting in the RV in the trailer out in Arizona, and I'm sitting there on a microphone attached to a freaking extension cord. And we were talking about exactly that thing, that there were ridiculous accounts that were being censored simply because they were identified by our intelligence apparatus. Specifically, they were coming in through the FBI. So if you don't think the FBI has a lever to pull still to activate, take down this video, make these things go away, I think that's very naive. There's no question that the problems that existed at the FBI in January of this year still exist. Like, they're just not fixed. And the guys that are running it have been told 100%, you must continue doing the same things or you're going to be responsible for the next terror attack or the next kid who goes and shoots up a church. The problem is you can't do pre-crime. And if you guys want to go back and look through my old shows, you'll find them. You can't do pre-crime. It's not a thing. It doesn't exist. It's a failure. But as I pointed out yesterday, the real scary thing for me is the federal intelligence apparatus and the federal law enforcement apparatus wins either way. I want you to consider this. Imagine that the FBI, with the help of the DEA, with the help of the ATF, with the help of local law enforcement, with the help of any kind of intelligence agencies, are able to stop a potential terrorist attack or a hate crime. They're going to do so, by the way, by invading your civil liberties. They're going to go through and they're going to do unlawful searches. They're going to recruit people that should not be recruited. They're going to allow plots to continue that shouldn't, so they can get the statistical accomplishments and they get the budget increase. But let's say they stop a big terror attack. What do we get? A press release. And that press release says, great job to us. We've earned our budget. We have real threats, and this is that's what your FBI is doing for you. You can even see Dan Bongino out there doing the hit on Fox. This is what I told them. They're going to go protect America. Captain America's not coming. There is no Avengers. It's you. You're the heroes, and we're going to go save Americans. So there's your big talk. Let's say the terrorist attack slips through. Somebody bombs a plane. Somebody sets off a bomb in the middle of Manhattan. Somebody gets in and grabs a bunch of weapons and goes and shoots up children. The FBI is going to say, we need more budget, because there are bigger threats than we can handle with the budget we have. It's an unfalsifiable premise. We need unlimited budget. We need unlimited access to you. We need to be able to see all the things to complete totalitarianism. I thought we made a movie about this. I thought that's what the police state was about when I worked with Dinesh D'Souza, when I worked with Dan Bongino to put that together. I thought the point that they were making was totalitarian government is the wrong answer, no matter who is the one in charge, no matter what party theoretically controls the reins of it. So shouldn't we be encouraging more local reliance? I've got a picture of a female cop with flowers on the screen, and I don't mean to be dismissive of female law enforcement agents, but there's not a lot of female law enforcement officers who have gone out and taken the shot. What I see is usually what I call the Super Bowl of masculinity. Somebody gets the call, active shooter, men show up with guns that know how to use those guns. They go into harm's way. They put themselves at risk so that they can stop someone who is killing someone that is innocent and unarmed. And I want men to do that. And I'm fine with being that man if necessary. I signed up for it. And if it happens, my wife and I have a plan for our church. It's happening. I'm the one who's going. I may not come back, but I'm going to go make sure that the other person doesn't either. If you haven't actually thought about what that looks like as a man, folks, those of you who are veterans, those of you who are former law enforcement, those of you who are just like concealed carriers, have you considered what happens if you go in there that you don't come back? Have you considered taking hits, getting shot? And what that would look like, because you might have to get shot in order to actually put down somebody, that you might hit them and they don't die immediately, and you're going to have to continue to return fire while wounded, while injured, and stay the ground and hold it so that other people can get away and live. Have you thought about what that looks like? Sadly, like that's where I spend some of my time at church on my knees first thing when I first start on a Sunday morning. I'm just thinking about it. What are my entrances? What do I need to cover? What pew am I going over the top of? Who's going to get in the way and that I can get down? What is my kid's going to go do? Where are they going to go? And my wife will usually figure that out too. And how am I going to put my body between any bad guy and the people that are behind me? Because that's my job. This idea of sheepdog and wolves and sheep is something that Colonel David Grossman talks about a lot. If you guys have never read On Killing, go read it. One of the things that's very interesting about this particular individual that we just played video from, and I'll do it one more time. The video, I got to leave myself on the screen. The video indicates to me that this guy probably spends some time with gaming. There's some gaming memes. There's some gaming references that are on his magazine. Some of them talk about things like Doom. I had to go back into some old Reddit forums to kind of get it for context. My guess is that he probably spent some time doing that. And one of the things that David Grossman brings out in his books is that video games are actually something that the military can use, and people who played video games can use it to desensitize the normal impact of shooting another human being, because at least you've seen a representation of it on screen. So we always said that, like, video games either do or don't cause violence. I don't think they do one way or another. But what they have the potential of doing is desensitizing troops, because we've had the most combat effective troops in the history of the world in the current era. And so that's something that you guys can find if you go and you read these books. You realize that, like, the philosophy is that human beings are very, very adverse to engaging in violence against other human beings. The entire animal kingdom on the mammalian side doesn't like to do it. Nearly all fights between animals, especially higher animals, are dominance plays. They're not about whether or not you can actually engage in lethal combat and come out the end, because at the end of the day, you're probably almost always wounded or injured. And so that's bad for animals. It's bad for lions. It's bad for gorillas. It's bad for zebras and elephants. It's just not something they want to do. They don't want to get into a fight to the death. So what they want to do is they want to posture. And most people are willing to posture. They're willing to carry the gun. But what they found is all kinds of different studies going back historically, including like in the Civil War, where they'd line up, and the amount of bodies that were resulting from the gunfire was not nearly the number that should have been. So people were loading their weapon and never firing it. So they'd find 4 or 5 musket balls stuffed down the end of it. Or they'd find that they were firing volleys over each other's heads because they did not want to actually engage and break that pane of glass which says, now I'm taking life. And people that are involved in video games actually have a chance to do that in a way that has never been done before. So I'm showing you that in so much as this may be one of the things. It's not a reason. It's just an explanation for what goes on. And then the other explanation is lies. Absolute lies, where parents and grown-ups, the people like us that are supposed to be paying attention and seeing what's going on and knowing what kids are about and what happened and how do we prevent this. You had a whole speech given by the principal saying we can never forget. That means you have to honestly talk about what happened. Does it not? We have to talk about what honestly happened. So now we're going to get into the narrative piece here. Before we do it, let's go ahead and just do a little quick break over to our Spotify sponsors. And so you guys will hear an ad read on that if you're listening on the audio. If you're not, here we go. This is an ABC News report. I pulled it from Newsbusters. They have no idea what could have caused this because they're liars.
23-year-old Robin Westman was able to leave what police called a video manifesto that they're now going through to try and establish motive. We've also been going through it and can tell you there are crude diagrams of the church. There are also photos of the weapons, and they include all sorts of writings, the names of past mass shooters, criticism of Israel, the name of President Trump written on the guns. There are also racial slurs, nihilistic statements, all painting the picture of a disturbed individual who carried out this mass shooting on the first week of school at the Annunciation Church in Minneapolis.
Now, let me just be really clear, because the name of Donald Trump sounds like he might have been in favor of Donald Trump, when in fact what it said was kill Donald Trump. So never let the facts get in the way of what you want to convey, which is that this guy was nihilistic and right-wing, and he had anti-Semitic slurs, so he obviously was like a Nazi type. You know, I think he was a crazy person that was probably involved in having some psychotropic drugs in his brain and some cross-sex hormones, which makes you not right. Isn't that an interesting way of framing that? And here's where the narrative game plays. And this is what I want you guys to understand. Imagine you have the ability to turn off somebody's social media feed, and you have the ability to pull that manifesto down or whatever the hell that thing was that we watched before, so that the people are only going to see the screenshots that you leak to the media. That's why the source came to me to get this out, because they actually saw right away that this had a potential of being exactly like what happened in Tennessee. Imagine if I have certain pictures that are going to indicate one ideology, when in fact, this guy was actually all over the map. Hatred for Jews. There was one on his holster that said 6 million is not enough. That's a reference to the Holocaust, as far as I can tell. There's also things saying brought to you by BlackRock, which sounds very like conspiratorial, when in reality, it sounds like he was just nuts. And he was probably just being kind of like an internet shit poster because he sees people get upset about BlackRock, so he writes that down. There was all these connections between like the shooter in Butler, PA, having been in a BlackRock video, so why not just start the legend any further? So when you have the ability to release only the pictures you want, and the news media is more than willing to go along with what you have, they just can't figure it out. It's just so complicated. Like, oh, that's so dangerous. How would anybody know? Clearly a disturbed individual that's nihilistic. By the way, the FBI's new favorite thing for domestic terrorism are nihilistic, violent extremists. We've seen 3 examples of it already this year in prominent ways, Palm Springs being the one that comes to mind on the top of my head. There was another one somewhere, like either in Idaho or something else. Nihilistic, violent extremists, right? I believe in nothing, Lebowski, that kind of thing. That's what nihilists are, right? That seems to be the push. And if you control the data that comes out, then nobody knows what that manifesto looks like, which looks like true mental illness. He also goes through his book, his manifesto, like notebook thing, which I don't know why everyone has to have one of those. But I guess when you're batshit crazy, like you want to get those ideas out, maybe out of your head, and you write them down. So he did. I'm going to give you a YouTuber's take on this, or this is a guy doing social media, because those of us that are actually in the business of putting videos out on the internet, if I showed a gun right now, if I actually reached back and grabbed one of the things on the back wall behind me right now and I handled it, it would be over. The stream will get nuked over on YouTube. YouTube people, you know this. You've probably seen this happen before. I've actually given a demonstration of making a gun clear and pulling the top and the slide off the bottom because we were making fun of somebody in the ATF. It was a senior ATF weapons guy, and he couldn't like detach the slide from the frame on a Glock, which by the way is like, you can do like 20 of them in the time that this guy couldn't do one. They're super easy. I have one behind me and I could show you. And if I did, our YouTube would be smashed. It would be gone. Absolutely gone. And they're constantly nuking the feeds from people in the gun world that are trying to show firearms reviews and so on. So there's all this stuff you have to do to be able to make sure that you can actually keep that going. And yet this guy was able to get his video up, no problem. And it didn't get nuked until after the shooting happened. Luckily, people who do GunTube stuff reached out to me right away and were able to archive it. And I do think that's a narrative victory for us, in so much as we want things to be truthful. We want things to be honest. We don't want our government to have the ability to lie to us, and we certainly don't want them to control information. That's our business. We should be able to say what is and what is not the thing that we want to believe in. I'm going to play you this kid's commentary. He's spot on. He's doing it from a car, but he's still spot on.
So you're telling me the person who committed the mass shooting today in Minneapolis uploaded their manifesto to YouTube this morning, and YouTube did not even have any red flag feature on it. Their detection system did not see that this was obviously a mentally ill person with ammos and guns in the video. Now, it is 2025. We have all the technology, all of the resources to detect these things, yet they still get bypassed.
I don't want the government going through that stuff, and I don't necessarily want YouTube going through and scanning for all that kind of thing, but yeah, he's right. Because we do know that stuff exists. I've had feeds nuked midstream because I was showing something that was not dangerous, violent, or otherwise. Because handling a weapon system is enough to make you get dropped off. Unless somebody wanted that to be out there for a few minutes, for whoever needed to see it. I don't get too conspiratorial about it. I'm just telling you, the fact of the matter is that would have been nuked if it was me. So it leads me to more questions. And then I get the lie stream, the stream of lies. Again, here's the guy. Here's some of the stuff that came out of that notebook. Do you think we would have seen this before? Would the FBI have given this information out? Would local PD have given this out? The local PD that answers to the local mayor that I'm going to play you, that apologizes to trans families? Would we be able to find out who the mom is as quickly if they didn't give the name out? If we didn't share who the name was, which I did, and InfoWars ran with it right away. What you're seeing here is a order granting name change of a miter. It's a Minnesota statute regulated document showing that he was legally changing his name with the help of his mom from Robert Paul Weston to Robin M. Westman. Same last name, changed to Robin M. at the age of 17, a minor. Mom is part of this thing. Mom helped. Doesn't mean mom's to blame, but mom's got some share of it. And here's something really gross and worse. This is something from Facebook. This is a Facebook announcement from the Church of the Annunciation there. She used to work at, congratulating her on retiring and thanking her for her service. And that's his mom. She doesn't look like an evil lady to me. She looks like a mom. She looks like a mom who has teenage kids. She could be one of my friend's wives. She could be the lady that sits next to me at church. And on the right-hand side of the screen, what you see is a drawing of the church, because he attended that school as well, and I'm sure he attended that church. This is an adult son in his young 20s who legally bought the gun per the ATF. He was able to legally buy it. He had no reason not to be able to buy it. Filled out his 4473, just like I do. And there he is with a knife stabbing. They called it a crude drawing. I'm going to play you that in a second, but they stabbing a drawing of the church. And what did he say? F the kids. Full well knowing what he was getting involved in. Here's MSNBC coverage of it. Again, I'm going to give you the news coverage, and then I'm going to give you the cut through in just a second here as well.
And all they should be hoping to do is have someone to sit with at lunch or someone to play with on the playground. And they should be waiting to hear an update when they get home. And that is not what these parents at the school experience today. Sorry, this is a tough one. Having your child killed while they are sitting in a pew for a morning prayer service is not what any parent should have to worry about. And I have felt a mixture of anger and a lot of anger and emotional exhaustion about this today, as I'm sure many of you have, because we have been here so many times. And yet again, like clockwork, half of the politicians in our country have little more to offer than thoughts and prayers. That is all they are offering. Join all of us in praying for the victims, was Vice President J.D. Vance's response today. That's what he said. That's it. Please join me in praying for everyone involved, Trump wrote. We have seen this play out over and over again. There is a shooting, then come the thoughts and prayers, and then comes the attempt to shift the focus. This is what always happens. You're going to start seeing narratives. You're already seeing them. They're already out there about how the shooter was trans. You're going to see narratives about how the shooter appeared to be anti-Trump and anti-Semitic, and clearly was in the midst of a mental health crisis. There's no question about that. But here's the thing. There are trans people all over the world. There are anti-Semitic people, unfortunately, all over the world. And people filled with plenty of political hate all over the world. And mental health issues are not unique to the United States. And yes, we should do more to address them. But it's also an issue all over the world.
Got it. Okay, lady. Didn't you work for the Biden administration? That's Jen Psaki right there, a.k.a. Ginger Goebbels. She's a great liar. She's a shitty actress. Did you hear the crocodile tears that she was rolling out? You could do this. And I'm sorry. Like, the voice change is stunning. Does she know how bad that was? That transition? They cut off screen and she immediately went from like pouty sobbing to just fine. Play up that action there, girl. Here's my friends at Catholic Vote. Their violence tracker. Tracker shows 500 attacks on U.S. Catholic churches since May of 2020. Now, Trump was in office in 2020. That was the BLM chaos. I think it was mostly a local problem. But then what we found out is that there was no instinct whatsoever to go after it's not Hatch Act, is it? It's the FACE Act violations of attacking a church. And again, it goes from spray paint at a crisis pregnancy center, which were not explicitly Catholic. A lot of them are non-denominational or other Christian denominations. Okay. And then it would go to broken windows and property damage. It would go to arson, which is obviously the next step up, where people could actually be really, really injured or seriously hurt. And then you move into the really scary stuff where like a church has a priest killed, maybe in the middle of mass, or killed in a rectory trying to minister to people. Were those prosecuted under the Biden administration? No. Mark Houck was prosecuted under the Biden administration for standing in front of an abortion clinic, what he calls an abortion mill, and pushing a man that said filthy, disgusting things to his child. And he did what every man should do. Defend your child, defend their honor, defend their innocence if you can. If you're going to shove a 70-year-old piece of shit who's going to scream in a child's face, so be it. And as I said at the time, and I'll say it again, Mark Houck was very tame compared to what that person should have gotten. Just the man code of what should have happened. 500 churches. You can read it. The attacks on churches number 520. The attacks on Catholic churches since the Dobbs decision leak was 354. The attacks on Catholic churches this year are 40. 40. Several per week on average. And remember, Merrick Garland told us that the reason that they couldn't find these people, there's the map. The map is pretty telling. Look at that. It's everywhere. But there's an awful lot in California. There's an awful lot on the seaboard. There's a few here in the Midwest that I see. Okay. Ain't that something? 47 of them in New York, 27 in Los Angeles, 17 in Philadelphia, where Mark Houck was arrested, 14 in the Bay Area, where we saw mass interrupted by transgender lunatic people. So Ginger Goebbels over there, she's crying. But they didn't do anything to stop it. And she made apologies for the group that did. And again, they were more than happy to go after pro-lifers, even people who were involved in the Holocaust and were in their 80s. Let's go ahead and lock those people up because they were praying outside of an abortion mill, and you're not going to give Satan his pound of flesh in the form of children. Spare me. This idea that thoughts and prayers should be ridiculed, if anybody's ever been through something really, really difficult, and some of you probably have, it's amazing how you turn to prayer. Even people who are atheists turn to prayer in the times when they think it is all coming to an end. I'm reminded that my dad had a best friend and was one of the great men that I remember being younger. This is actually kind of an emotional story for me too, but he was dying and he was an atheist, and he asked my dad to pray with him, and he was terrified of death. And even in that moment, he knew like that was the thing he turned to, but he didn't know how because he didn't have a lifetime of learning it. And so he asked for help. This is very common. It happens in hospital wards. It happens on battlefields. It happens in hospice care. People who face down death turn to God in prayer almost universally. To lampoon that and to shame people that think that that is the answer. It's almost always the only answer. It's an acknowledgement of the opposite of pride. Pride says, I can solve this problem as a man. But as you face your own mortality, you realize like you've got almost no control in this. I experienced this very strongly when I started going up against the federal government, which we've been kind of calling the Godverment of late, as leftists like to think of it, right? Godverment. Because it has godlike powers over man, but not over God. So it's really interesting to see a concerted effort. Here's another one. This is from Fox News. Making fun of thoughts and prayers. I'm going to play you a couple of people on Fox that is going to prove to you that they are, in fact, a conservative news product, but not a conservative company. And if you guys are watching them or your friends are too, just get them over here. Get them over to places that are doing independent thought, whatever that looks like. I got a handful of videos to get through in the next few minutes, so I'm going to continue going. Unfortunately, you guys may have heard, Tuesday was the last American Radicals podcast because this government managed to go pay off my friends, not very much money, by the way, comparatively, but bought their voices and their silence. And I know they're starting to feel it right now. And it's really, it's strange. It's a strange moment for me to realize that my buddies who were in this with me, I'm happy for them to have the ability to move on with their lives. And I'm going to miss their voices in this fight against it and calling out tyranny and narrative and lies, because the mission continues. It's not going away. Here's the mayor of Minneapolis, a guy named Jacob Frey. I'll give you some background on him in a second here, but here he is doing his thing.
These were Minneapolis families. These were American families. And the amount of pain that they are suffering right now is extraordinary. And don't just say this is about thoughts and prayers right now. These kids were literally praying. It was the first week of school. They were in a church. These are kids that should be learning with their friends. They should be playing on the playground. They should be able to go to school or church in peace without the fear or risk of violence, and their parents should have the same kind of assurance. These are the sort of basic assurances that every family should have, every step of the day, regardless of where they are in our country.
That seems very performative to me. He didn't know those people any more than I do. And he has the same sort of vibe of the, I don't know if you guys have ever been in an acting class, but you take a moment, you take a beat, and and then you go and you do the acting. This is why people talk about there being crisis actors and other sort of fakes, because you have fakes like this asshole out there doing this thing. It's performative. It's theatrical. I don't believe anything he said. Why not, Kyle? Seems genuine. Because this is the same guy. The exact same dude at the funeral of George freaking Fentanyl Floyd. He's sobbing into a freaking COVID mask, touching a gold-gilded casket for a scumbag who died from a fentanyl overdose. This criminal I didn't know. So spare us, Jacob Fry, liar, creep, fake, fraud. What other words are there? They're all real. Let's do another one. I'm going to keep moving through this. I'm calling this out, then I'm going to show you why the narrative was the win.
That we're still trying to get a better handle on. We're still going through the videos and going through the writings. So just to describe it to folks, they're YouTube videos where there's a number of either journals or they look like journals where there's a number of writings, not all of them in the English language. There's some sort of Eastern European language that's used. Some of it is in English. And this individual is writing about a whole host of things. Won't get into all the particular details. As we stated last hour, we're not here to do the bidding of this individual so that we can basically put out the information they were hoping to gain out of this shooting, which is that we're still trying to get a better.
And so what we're trying to say here is we're trying to say here things is we're going to go ahead and smear the narrative around, and there were obviously some very disjointed things, some things that were not in the English language. We're not going to do the bidding of it. I showed you guys 90 seconds of his so-called manifesto video. It pointed to a few things: hate, potentially possession, certainly inviting demonic things into your life. Oh, it's really super easy. Like, how do you know, Kyle? Because the dude drew himself looking into a mirror and saw a demon looking back at him. That is not a perfectly healthy person. What could cause that? I don't know. Maybe if you started injecting estrogen at 17 years old and you started growing your hair out and people told you that you actually got to be a girl when you had a penis. That would probably do it. That might make you not sane. So they're out there covering it up. By the way, that was at 2 p.m. my time. That's when that video went live. 2 p.m. That guy said, we don't really know what's going on here. I knew what was going on at 10:15 a.m. my time. So how am I 2.5 hours ahead of the mainstream, fully funded, multi-million-dollar studio, sources everywhere, dozens and dozens of investigative type journalist people and editors and so on? Why is this one guy sitting at this one studio desk in this little house outside of Austin, Texas? Why am I ahead of these guys by hours? And it's not because of irresponsibility, because for the first time in my history of doing this stuff, I've only been doing this for a couple years, I get a phone call or I get my messaging, and my question back was, because you don't want to make this wrong. You don't want to get this story wrong. I said, how good is this information? I always ask my sources to self-assess. Should I run with this? And the answer was, it is 100%. That is the first time since I've done this. I started speaking publicly in September of 2022. The first time I've ever got a 100% answer. The only thing that's more 100% is actually seeing the scene yourself or getting documents and handing it over. And I've done that a few times as well, as you guys probably know. 100% this is what's going on. But Amy Klobuchar doesn't know. She's a United States Senator. This is 7 p.m. Let's see, 7 p.m. my time, almost 8 p.m. my time. So now she is like 9 hours late on this. Maybe 8 hours and change late. Let's spin it again.
These kids did extraordinary things, but they never should have been put in that position in the first place. This was a madman. He was an all-purpose hater, by the way. Hated groups left, right, you name it. There's no way to pin an ideology on this, and I think people should remember this as the facts come out about this manifesto. But what I learned from this, once again, is that guns, and we're a proud hunting state. There's a lot of law-abiding gun owners in Minnesota, but there's got to be more we can do.
There's got to be more we could do about the guns. That's what I learned about it. We're a hunting state, so I'm going to say one thing. There's my platitude. Guns are okay, but not guns that kill people, which are all guns. And there you go. Here's a tweet from someone called the Trans Army. To all U.S. trans military members, we need you to contact your local trans organization and offer your support. You need to help train other trans people and prepare them from what's coming. Your skills and your training will be needed. It's weird. It's almost like it's not about the gun. I am surrounded by guns. Here, let me show you the screen. Let me point to them. There's a shotgun. Hold on. Let's do it right here. There's a shotgun in the corner of the room right there. That's a Benelli 12 gauge, right? There is a 357 Magnum revolver right there. There's a 44 mag off screen that you can't see hanging in a holster, and it's got all kinds of ammunition with it as well. This thing has speed loaders that you could use. There's a 12 gauge tube here if you wanted to do a hand thing. You're not supposed to shoot 12 gauge shotguns. It's for pepper spray or something. And then I've got a 9mm handgun sitting over there. Oh yeah, and I got a flamethrower on the floor. It's almost like it's not the guns, people. Good thing we got Fox News to straighten us out, right? Good thing we got Fox. I'm sure Fox News wouldn't make the claim that it was something about guns.
Our system is reactive. Something bad happens, we react to it. And what people are crying for now is, how can we prevent this? How can we stop it? And the only way to stop it is to identify the shooter ahead of time or keep the weapons out of their hands. And so we're going to have a conversation of freedom versus protecting children. I mean, how many school shootings does it take before we're going to have a conversation about keeping firearms out? It's always a young white male, almost always. I mean, did anyone this morning think, I wonder if that was a female? Did any of y'all think that? I mean, there's been one school shooting involving a female.
It was in Tennessee.
One. Yeah, Tennessee. But other than that, it is usually young white males.
We need to start talking about young white males and the ownership of firearms, says so-called conservative Trey Gowdy. He was an elected representative, was he not? From the Republican Party. Republicans are not conservatives. Republicans are not part of the solution. They continue to be. What in the name of hell was that? By the way, Jesse Waters on the same network goes on later and was like, so they always want to come for the guns. Why would you want to disarm people in a situation like that? I'm telling you what, someone comes shooting through the windows at my church, I'm putting them down. I train my handgun out to 200 yards with a 9mm handgun. Why? Why would you do that? Oh, because I might have to shoot someone far away. Because that was my life when I was in the law enforcement world, and I was like, I'm on an Indian reservation. Like, someone might have a deer rifle, and I might only have my handgun and can't get to my rifle. I'm going to be able to take a 100-yard shot into a window. I showed one of the guys that I actually showed Bill Taylor this yesterday. I got a video of me shooting my handgun at 50 on a quick draw from holster to target, man size, 50 yards, under a second and a half. Why would you train that? Because you want to be able to pull your gun and put somebody down that's going to do something evil. Not because you're excited about it. It's because skill set you should learn. Meanwhile, I've got more examples. This is all from Andy Ngo's reporting. If you guys aren't following Andy Ngo, you're missing out. I was following Andy when I was in the FBI. I continue to follow him. I let him know. I dropped his name on InfoWars as well. Here's somebody else saying, we all got what we got, and we got each other. Death before detransition. There was a whole news article. There were several news articles about transgender people getting guns and arming up so they could protect themselves. Queer people in Trump's America. The Philadelphia Inquirer did a thing on it. These people are clowns. They're LARPers. It doesn't mean they're dangerous. Like, I'm fine with people owning guns. I don't care. I don't care if you're gay or not. It doesn't matter if you're transgender or confused. But if you start having cross-sex hormones and you start having things injected into your body that change your psychiatric relation, we should probably have some restrictions. We should police ourselves. But how about this? If you live with someone and your child is putting that kind of shit on their guns and writing all over at the end of their shotgun, if they're leaving like demonic messages all over the place, moms, when your adult kid is decorating their pump action and their rifles and writing, I hate Trump and 6 million Jews wasn't enough and all the other crazy stuff, maybe it's time for you to have a little step in there. Maybe they shouldn't be hanging out with a weapon system because they're going to kill themselves or somebody else. So let's be real serious about that, because that's absurd. Anyway, nobody could figure out what happened, turns out. Here's the police chief. This is at 3 o'clock Central Time. Go back. So now we're at 4.5 hours after I knew the story because of people who were on scene.
So the question was on a possible motive and a relationship to the church or to the school. I have no information to share on a motive other than saying, again, that there was some sort of manifesto that was timed to come out on YouTube. It's been taken down, and our investigators are going through that to try and develop a motive from that. Additionally, there are these 3 search warrants happening in residential locations, and we may very well, find more information or writings that could give some sense to that, but we don't have that now.
They don't have that there. That is, as I said, 4.5 hours after I knew the story. I had a photo, a name, I had the background, I had the mom's name. I knew that there were videos. People were pulling videos like 4 hours prior to that. 4.5 hours, I had the info. Within half an hour, the YouTube and the internet sleuths were already getting it done. No idea what happened, he says. That's the chief of police, Brian O'Hara from Minneapolis. Okay, here he is at 8:42. This is, what is it, like 9 or 10 hours after I had the information. I think I had it about 10 Central. So now you can add 2. Yeah, he's almost at like 11 hours. Here we go.
So right now we don't have a clear motive to establish for why he did this at the church today. We're obviously open to every possibility, and we're hopeful that once we are able to go through the scene, all of the evidence that's collected, that we'll be able to better provide answers for our community.
Yeah. Are you shitting me? It should have been the right question. Are you shitting me right now? Is that what's happening? The FBI director has already declared that they're going to investigate it as a hate crime. Why did they do that? Because we pushed it out right away. So God bless the maniacs over at InfoWars. I'm going to give you something here. Breaking exclusive. Alex Jones from his car, because Alex Jones is such a madman that even when he takes a day off to go look at his dad, who was having heart surgery, he can't take a day off. He's got to get into it because this man, Alex Jones is the guy that you see on the screen, for better or for worse. And he's hysterical and he's nuts. And he's like, the truth, as much as he can tell it, turned up to 11. And I think that there's almost no lying in his brain. It's what he believes, so he just goes with it. Here's some Alex Jones stuff, because I got 2 cuts from InfoWars. I spent like maybe 2 hours yesterday with them, so I wanted to take some cuts from it. And this is the take that we had, which is after this cover-up, which is what that was. What you just saw, a police chief telling you things that are clearly false. He has to answer to the citizens and gave fake and false and lying information. If I had it in 9 hours prior to him, why the hell did he not?
This is an epic fail of the system to cover this up. It's going to be a huge scandal. We need to find out who was behind it. And the truth is, we're the media now. We've been the media for a long time. So you guys said this hour 1. I said it as well. But now it's confirmed that their narrative control is blown in their face. And what are they going to do?
We know moments. And to me, living through this right now, it's like, okay, no, we're in a big moment right now.
We are. That's the point I wanted to make. And I'm never wrong when it's obvious.
There's that meme, and Owen, you've probably seen it too. And it's like, what we thought the resistance looks like, and a bunch of buildings burning. And it's like what the resistance really is. And it's like a dad and his wife, and they're growing a garden, and they're just, making themselves self-reliant and insulated against whatever needs to come their way. I'm reading news feeds right now while we're talking, and while Alex was out there discussing it. The New York Post is claiming in their headline that Minneapolis Catholic school gunman ID'd as Robin Westman, as we stated, Robert Westman previously, but it sounds like his mom helped him change his name. While possible manifesto shows psychotic obsession with mass shooters.
At this point, obviously, the feds cannot keep this information from the local police if that's what was going on in the beginning, which I suspect was. Now, I don't know how they don't come out in a press conference. Really within hours, I would say. I don't know how they don't come out in a press conference now and put all this information out, because this is like they've lost. So, okay, you won the first round. You got a leadoff home run on us because you pretended like you didn't know any of this in the first press conference. But now we just got up to bat in our half of the inning, and we just hit a grand slam. So
now we're seeing it. Look at Fox. Now Fox is putting it known by two names,
Wow.
Robin Westman and Robert Westman. Is that how you say it? Because again, a trans-identified
Kyle, this
person.
is like
It was seconds. It was seconds after I found out. It was the first thing they said. Trans-identified, went by name, Robert, quote, Robin Westman. This is hours ago. I was getting this. What is it now? It's now 1:20. I'm just seeing that about 30 minutes ago. The local news is starting to get on it. Okay, you're seeing right there that I was diagnosing it at the time. That was 1 o'clock my time. I got the information close to 10 o'clock. So 3 hours later, and then you're starting to see Fox. They're not saying trans-identified. It took minutes for me to get the real information. I'm not that special. I'm really not. Other than I'm only going to say things that I know are true, and I'm not going to let people lie if I know it. And then if that was 1 p.m. my time, at 8:47 p.m., that press conference with the police chief saying, still, we have no idea what's going on here. What kind of bullshit artists are they trying to pull? Here's more from that particular segment, and this is the diagnostics on what we think actually went down yesterday and how it went down. It's nonviolent kid. That's what we got, and two names. We got two names and nonviolent. So that sounds great. They're slowly going to work their way back to this.
Let me kind of just lay this out here. Kyle, I don't think any of this information gets out. A, if it's not for you, quite frankly. B, if it's not for now us on the show today, I don't think any of this information is out. If we did not do it, Kyle, if we did not do this, they would have covered this up. If we did not do this, because that's what I'm saying. I've been through a bunch of different moments like this, and every single one has different timelines and length of periods and rules and stuff. But I mean, there's different timelines and ways that this stuff works out. I'm sitting here. I'm telling the audience, folks. I've worked at InfoWars with Alex Jones. Okay, I've been through this stuff. I'm telling you, in the last 4 hours, we just went through a historical moment when it comes to free press versus institutional cover-up. I'll say it like that. I think that's a good, simple way to put it. You just witnessed a paramount moment. I felt it an hour ago when I said it. Now it's totally confirmed. We just went through a paramount moment where the institutional cover-up has been beaten by free independent press. Unbelievable stuff. God bless your sources. God bless Kyle Seraphin. God bless InfoWars. Unbelievable victory today.
And yet also an unbelievable tragedy. And I told him right afterwards, I was like, it doesn't feel like a win because children are not going home to their parents. And it makes me sick. And it made me sick. It made me feel physically sick sitting on there. So I'm like going back and forth between feeling like I want to sob for these parents, and also looking at the freaking evil of lies that are going on in our media and that our government is complicit in it. Well, like, what the hell are we paying for? This is the New York Times that was out right then when Owen and I grabbed a screen grab while we were talking. So this is concurrent to the discussion that we were having. And it was hours old that we had the name, we had the background, we had the mom, we knew exactly what was going on. We knew that she was an entire employee of the church. We had pictures of her. We had the manifesto stuff. We had the videos. We had all of the craziness. The demonic images. You got New York Times just in at like 1:30 yesterday. Investigators have identified the attacker as Robin Westman, who is believed to be a former student, according to law enforcement with knowledge of the investigation, and the suspect's mother is a retired employee of the school, the official said. Sources say, you know what? My sources said the same, except they said it really early, right away. Why were you guys slow leaking it, if not to try to cover it? And here is your, here's the mayor of said city, right? Here he is crying about it. Looks like this.
When you talk about compassion, I don't want to tiptoe around the edge of this, but the shooter's name was in question, the gender of the shooter. No one's really sure what's going on there. 5 years ago it was Robert, then a name changed to Robin. Okay. This is being seized in all corners, as you can imagine, in all sorts of ways. And you know that, Mayor, and perhaps that's why when you spoke about this so profoundly and powerfully as you are even here now, but when you spoke about this today publicly, you voiced concern for the transgender community, for the community overall. And obviously you chose to do that in that moment because you thought it was important. And I wanted to give you a chance to say why you felt it was important to do that in that moment.
Obviously, I've heard about the rhetoric and the narrative that is being pushed out, but here's the thing. Anybody that is going to use this as an opportunity to villainize our trans community or any community has lost touch with a common humanity. We got to be operating not out of hate for any group, but out of a love for our children. That's where the focus needs to be right now. A love for our kids. Seeing these kids, not just as somebody else's kids, this horrific thing happened, but what if it was our own? How would we feel then? So, look, we need to be standing up for every community out there. A Catholic community, too, by the way. I mean...
Oh, yeah, after the fact, you're worried about the Catholic community?
Già troppa frociaggine.
Too much frociaggine. Some people are not as good as other people, period. The end. This is the same guy that was out there giving messages in Arabic to a Somali community because he's running for re-election. And I saw that, and that was like the day before yesterday. Screw that guy. Screw your fake compassion. Here's the thing. If you're part of a community that wants to hurt children, I want to put a round right in between your freaking eyeballs. And I'll sleep like a baby. I do not care if you don't get up in the morning. Ever. This guy's a dad? Oh, wait. That's right. Because he did this. Joy comes in the morning. Freaking spare me. Please. And again, the picture you're seeing on the screen right now, what are you seeing? Does that look like a guy that's okay? Does that look like a Robin that's okay? There's men named Robin, I think. Wasn't there like a Batman sidekick? Wasn't that Robin? Kind of gender confused too. He wore tights, right? Okay, look at this guy. Pigtails. He's got earrings on. He's doing his best. He changed his name. Like, that is not an okay person. And then we saw exactly what it looks like when that dude decides to put on his spikes and go on the field. Sponsored by BlackRock. F your God. I love you. I hate you. On your magazines? Freaking psycho. Yeah, mental illness can be a big part of it. Guess what helps mental illness? Injecting in female hormones into a dude's body. It doesn't make it right. And we saw the same thing happen in the why the church? Why was that a focus? I had someone reach out to me, and I can't confirm this is true, but it sounded like either they barred the doors or he barred the doors. And so the information is going to be relevant in the future. Who barred the doors and why? But they said that he wasn't able to enter the sanctuary. And they credited that. And it stopped people from dying. That he couldn't get into the actual church. Wouldn't that be something? Wouldn't that be something that you'd expect a demon wouldn't be able to do? Walk through the doors, over the threshold. That's speculative, obviously. But for people who don't think that thoughts and prayers are just like words empty that just float off and it's just an expression on social media, people who actually believe in this stuff, who know that there is evil and evil will come for you and the only thing that protects you, even Hollywood knows it. I told this to Alex Jones yesterday. Think about every single scene you've ever seen about fighting demons in a Hollywood presentation. There's something interesting about it. It's almost always prayers in Latin. It's almost always an exorcism type ritual, and it's always coming from the Catholic Church. For those of you who aren't Catholic, just consider there's a long history there. It's 2,000 years of fighting evil and the devil. Yeah, it definitely got taken over sometimes, and there were some bad people involved. There were reformations, and there were all kinds of inquisitions and all this other stuff. Like, it's an institution of man. But some of those things are very powerful, and there's a reason why that's what the evil people recognize as their enemy. Maybe I'm reading too much into it, but I don't think so. I really don't. And especially when I see stuff like this. Remember, it's going to be a tough day for trans kids. Don't worry about the kids who were actually killed, who were Catholics, who were doing the thing that people have done for thousands of years. Get on their knees, receive the body of Christ, pray at Mass. Let's worry about the people that are confused about their gender and their moms are telling them it's okay to cut their penis off.
It's a rough day to be a trans kid in Minnesota. And I'm sure it's just going to get rougher. But I just want to maintain some simple truths before folks get it twisted. Being trans is not a mental illness. Having a mental illness does not make you inherently more violent. Trans people are not inherently violent. That's all.
I feel like I've heard that before. Why would that be? Kyle, tell me about your background. Well, you grew up in the 80s and you remember things. You ended up going to the FBI Academy. You have this thing on your wall. You see, I see this. Silence of the Lambs. You remember that movie? That was really good, right? It was one of those great movies. It's what we thought the FBI was about. We somehow thought that there was going to be like young women coming out of the academy being used as sexual bait for predators and serial killers. Like, oh, okay, that was a really good movie. But I do remember this one little scene. The myth that doing whatever that was not going to lead to danger. What was it like? Someone give me the date on it. I think it was like 1987. I might be off. Here's something from Silence of the Lambs that I can't help but remember.
The significance of the moth is change. Caterpillar into chrysalis or pupa, and from thence into beauty. Our belly wants to change too.
There's no correlation in the literature between transsexualism and violence. Transsexuals are very passive.
Clever girl. You're so close to the way you're going to catch him. Do you realize that?
1991. Who writes that literature, it turns out? Oh, academics. Academics that are on the hard left. Academics that have been pushing nonsense for a long time. I'm not saying that there's necessarily something violent about it. I'm just saying don't lie to me. And don't tell me that I can't see my own eyes, because I know what we're paying for in our government, in our media, and I've been watching it happen, and so did you. That was the anatomy of a cover-up, and it's a failure simply because there's people inside of law enforcement that don't want this to go away, and they don't want to actually lie about it because they actually think they're servants of the public. So it's worth noting that. Let's take 1 second here. I'm going to put a Spotify ad in as well. We've gone kind of long today, and we only had one sponsor up front, so there it is. You guys can listen to that. I want to thank all of you that are watching and listening, especially we've seen like a bigger YouTube audience, and for those of you that are part of it, if you guys have not signed up for the channel, I'd really appreciate it if you did. It'd be a big way to be able to move things. I don't break stories all the time, but when we do, you guys can be part of it, and you can subscribe very easily. Do the same thing over on Rumble. It's called follow on Rumble, same thing. You can subscribe or follow on X. And you can do so on Locals. Locals, I just go to, it's KyleSeraphin.com. That's our Locals channel. If you guys want to support what we're doing here, you know, this mostly is done as an effort because I think it's community service, and I don't worry about the money end of it. But if you do want to get financially involved, you can go to Locals and you can support us. You can be a sponsor of us. It's very easy to do. If you want to just give us a like and share it with a friend, that's just about as good. Honestly, adding audience is the most important thing we can do. So again, you can go to locals. It's KyleSeraphin.com. You can go to share the show by giving them KyleSeraphinShow.com. That's where you'll find Spotify, which is a great little vector for us. You got video and audio over there. And then again, like the videos, that bumps it up in the ratings. Share it with a friend. Super easy to do. Subscribe if you guys want to join us on a regular basis. I'd love it if you did. If you've never seen our Rumble chat, they're the best people. It's the most positive community you'll find. And I know that our folks over on YouTube as well. Pretty awesome that you guys are continuing to join and be part of that. So we'll be doing a call-in show tonight, as you guys are asking. Anybody that is a subscriber to any of the places that we're a subscriber, so you could be a channel member on YouTube, you can be a subscriber over on X, or you can be a subscriber on Locals. All of you get the phone number to be able to call in, and we do just to like your thoughts. I don't have anything in particular. We can just shoot the shit about what you're interested in. You can talk about your feelings on this. You could talk about anything else. And we do that starting at 7 o'clock my time central. It's 8 o'clock on the East Coast, which is time for people to be able to get home, generally speaking, on the West Coast as well. And join us for that if you guys want. Again, our call-in show is always a smaller audience, but it's always interesting to see what you guys have to think and say. We've got a really nice crew, very positive, sort of forward thinking. I always learn something whenever we do those shows. So join us for that tonight. And I'm going to spend the rest of the day editing together another FBI whistleblower video because I did a long interview with Bill Taylor. And we're going to go to that for the Sunday sit down. You guys are going to learn something about FBI malfeasance that you didn't know, including a hit plot on 35 FBI employees that the FBI allowed to go onward. If you're not subscribed to the channel, you won't find it on Sunday. So make sure you do. God bless all of you. God bless these families that are going through such an awful time. I don't like to sit and put it out there, but say a prayer. If you guys do pray, say a prayer for their families and for these children and the repose of their soul, and hug your kids close because you never know. All right. I will see you again either tonight or tomorrow, and we'll see you real soon. Hang in out there. It's going to be all right.
Thanks for listening to The Kyle Seraphin Show, streamed live weekdays on rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin. Follow Kyle on Twitter, Truth Social, and Instagram at Kyle Seraphin.